My brother told me I didn't deserve to be at his engagement party. Yeah, he actually said that. I couldn't believe the words as they hung in the air, sharp and cold. Gideon's smug grin made it worse, like he was proud of how much he had hurt me. I wanted to yell, to shove back, to make him see how wrong he was, but all that came out was a shaky laugh. We had been at brunch at Mom's place, the kind of Sunday gathering where everything is polished and perfect, and everyone smiles like nothing's wrong. But nothing felt perfect anymore. Gideon was in his element, charming and confident, the center of attention, and I felt smaller than ever. I tried to talk, to explain that I wanted to celebrate with him, that this shouldn't matter, but he cut me off with that line that still echoes in my head: I wasn't worthy. I felt the heat rise, the sting of tears I refused to let fall, and before I could think, I turned and walked out. I didn't care if Mom called after me, didn't care about the stunned silence behind me. Every step away from the house felt like a mixture of relief and heartbreak. By the time I got back to my apartment, my mind was racing, trying to escape the humiliation and the anger, trying to find a place that wasn't filled with reminders of Gideon's arrogance. The answer came suddenly: Hawaii. I booked a flight on impulse, needing distance, sun, and ocean to drown the hurt. I needed to breathe, to think, to figure out whether I'd let this go, or if maybe, just maybe, it was time for a little payback. I packed quickly, throwing clothes and a few essentials into a bag. The plane ticket burned a hole in my wallet, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, it felt like I was taking control, leaving behind the brother who thought he could decide my worth. The moment the plane doors opened, I was hit by the thick, salty scent of the ocean, mingled with the sweet, almost tropical smell of plumeria drifting on the trade winds. Sunlight bounced off the black volcanic rocks scattered along the shore, and the waves crashed with a rhythm that felt like it belonged to a world completely separate from mine. I stepped onto the sand, letting it sink between my toes, and for the first time in hours, or maybe years, I could breathe without the weight of Gideon's words pressing down on me. I rented a small beachside bungalow, nothing fancy, just a place to be alone and think. Out here, there were no carefully curated parties, no social expectations, no brothers telling me I wasn't enough. The contrast between this freedom and the suffocating perfection of home was so sharp it hurt in a different way. That evening, I wandered into a local bar with bamboo walls and lanterns swaying in the wind. The bartender, Kai Nakamura, was a calm presence, pouring drinks with quiet confidence. When I slumped onto a stool, he didn't bother asking questions. He just smiled and said, "Sometimes being out of sight gives you the clarity to see who really matters." His words hit me harder than I expected. As I sipped my drink, memories started creeping into childhood afternoons where Gideon would grab the spotlight, taking credit for things I'd worked on, moments my parents praised him for that I dreamed of being praised for myself. Every small betrayal, every overshadowed achievement, flashed through my mind. The ocean roared outside, relentless and steady, and I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in a long time: control. I could let it go, move on, and keep my dignity intact, or I could do something, just something, to level the scales. The thought made my chest tighten, equal parts thrilling and terrifying. I started to bend the rules I'd always lived by. I ignored the calls from Mom, let messages from Gideon go unanswered. For once, I didn't feel guilty. Instead, there was a rush in claiming a small corner of freedom that had always been denied to me. The next morning, I rented a surfboard. My stomach twisted with nerves. I hadn't stood on one since I was a kid, but I pushed past the fear and waded into the waves. Every fall made me laugh, every success made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. I carried a small camera everywhere, snapping pictures of the volcanic cliffs, the sunrise bleeding over the horizon, the patterns the tide left in the sand. I didn't post them, didn't show anyone. They were just for me, a record that I could exist without validation, without someone else deciding my worth. The quiet moments, the sunsets, they made the memories come back sharper. I remembered school projects where Gideon would swoop in at the last minute, claiming my ideas as his own. I remembered family dinners where he twisted stories to make himself look better while I got scolded for speaking up. I remembered friendships quietly sabotaged, people pushed away because he wanted the spotlight all to himself. The memories weren't just painful, they were fuel. I started writing everything down, not just what he'd done, but what I wanted to do. The anger in my chest began to shape into something clearer, almost precise. I sketched ideas, small ways to make him realize the cost of arrogance, ways that wouldn't hurt anyone else but might shake his world enough to make him notice me. Every word in that journal tightened a plan, a subtle, careful path to show Gideon that for once, someone else could hold the power. The night of Gideon's engagement party was everything he wanted: grand, polished, and perfectly orchestrated. The chandelier sparkled above the ballroom, mirrors reflecting laughter in champagne glasses, and waiters moved silently, offering hors d'oeuvres to the well-dressed crowd. Friends, distant relatives, and business associates mingled, all drawn into the perfection Gideon had spent months planning. Yet, something felt off beneath the glitter. Evan wasn't there, and even though no one said it outright, his absence was noticed. Small whispers drifted through the rooms, brief glances exchanged, and a few older relatives subtly shook their heads. Some eyes seemed to carry a hint of blame toward Gideon, questioning if he'd gone too far. He laughed, made jokes, and smiled for the cameras, but inside, a small knot of unease had formed. Marissa Klein, standing near him in a sleek dress, smiled politely, but there was a sharpness in her gaze he hadn't expected. She made a casual comment about family loyalty, but the way her eyes lingered on him suggested she knew more about the tension than she let on. Gideon laughed it off, confident, but a tiny part of him felt the unease deepen. He tried to bury the thought, focusing on the toasts, the gifts, the perfect photographs. Still, throughout the night, he found himself glancing at the empty place where Evan should have been, feeling a flicker of something he didn't want to admit: guilt, maybe, or unease. It was subtle, just enough to prick at his ego. Meanwhile, miles away, Evan watched and waited. Every detail Gideon had so carefully curated only fueled the plans forming in his mind. The absence, the whispers, the cracks in Gideon's flawless image, they were all part of the next move. And for the first time, the idea of revenge no longer felt like a thought, it felt inevitable. I met Leah Torres one evening at a small cafe tucked between the sand and the cliffs. She had an easy smile, sharp eyes, and a way of speaking that made everything feel like a challenge and a game at the same time. I told her a little about my brother, and instead of judging, she leaned back and said, "Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's clever, subtle. You make them trip over their own arrogance." Her words stuck with me. That night, I began sketching out ideas, small scenarios where Gideon's pride could betray him. Nothing illegal, nothing cruel, just moments where his need to look perfect, to control every situation, would push him into embarrassment or discomfort. I imagined situations where family expectations, social norms, and his own ego would work against him, all carefully planned, all precise. I went through old family calendars, remembered routines, habits, and predictable patterns. Gideon always started his day with a workout at the same time, checked emails obsessively, and flaunted his achievements at every opportunity. I knew who he liked to impress, what buttons to press, and what little insecurities he never admitted aloud. Every detail became a tool I could use, a domino waiting to fall. Leah's advice echoed in my head: the key was subtlety, patience, and timing. The goal wasn't to hurt anyone physically or to destroy relationships, but to make Gideon face consequences for his arrogance, to mirror the betrayal he had made me feel for years. As I plotted quietly, I felt a strange thrill, not cruelty, not hatred, but the clarity that this could finally be my moment, my chance to reclaim control, to show him that the world didn't revolve around his perfection. By the time the sun rose over the volcanic cliffs, I had a plan taking shape, delicate yet unstoppable, ready to unfold without anyone ever realizing who had set it in motion. I started with small, careful nudges. I sent letters and notes to some of Gideon's closest friends and family, anonymously, reminding them of little slights, forgotten debts, and moments where he'd belittled or taken credit. Nothing obvious, just enough to make them pause and remember. The words were gentle, almost like a whisper from the past, but they carried weight. When the next family gathering rolled around, the effect was immediate. People smiled, but the smiles were tight, awkward. Conversations hesitated, laughter faltered, and tiny, almost imperceptible glances were exchanged across tables. The air had shifted in a way that wasn't dramatic, but it was enough to unsettle Gideon. He tried to brush it off, laughing louder, leaning a little too close to show confidence, cracking jokes that fell flat. But I could see the slight twitch in his jaw, the quick glance around the room, the flicker of worry in his eyes. He began overthinking every interaction, analyzing every look, every pause, every laugh as if some secret message was hidden there. Paranoia crept in slowly, gnawing at his pride, even though no one could say what was wrong. I watched from a quiet corner, invisible but fully aware, and felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Satisfaction, yes, I'd finally disrupted the perfection he always demanded, but also guilt, because I knew how deeply he'd feel it, how real the discomfort would seem. My chest tightened with the weight of it, but underneath, I felt alive in a way I hadn't before. Every awkward glance he received, every brief pause in conversation, was a small victory, a reminder that even the untouchable could be shaken. And yet, I knew this was only the beginning. There were more moves to make, more ways to turn his arrogance against him, all without him ever knowing it was me. I was sitting on the balcony, waves crashing against the rocks below, when my phone rang. It was Mom. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Evan," she said, her voice soft. "Gideon," he called me. He sounded, I don't know, lost. He said he feels alone, like nobody understands him. I froze. Hearing that, a strange mixture of feelings hit me: confusion, anger, and an unexpected twinge of sympathy. All those years of being overshadowed, all the plans I had set in motion, suddenly felt heavier. Could I really keep going knowing he was hurting, even if it was self-inflicted? My chest tightened, and I had to sit down. But before I could sort through the emotions, I got another piece of news. One of Gideon's colleagues at the family business had made a mistake, a small but noticeable one, and Gideon, in his pride, had tried to cover it up rather than admit it. I could use it. I could amplify it subtly, let it become one of those little cracks that showed the world he wasn't perfect. I sat with the thought, feeling the pull in two directions. Part of me wanted to keep the plan going, to make him feel the sting of arrogance as he deserved. Another part of me hesitated, thinking of that vulnerable voice over the phone, the way he admitted feeling isolated. Was revenge worth crushing that fragile side of him? The ocean roared below me, constant and indifferent, as I stared at my journal and the notes I'd been compiling. My hands shook a little. The truth was clear: I wanted him to face consequences, but empathy had found its way into the plan. It complicated everything, making me question whether revenge could ever feel clean when the person on the receiving end was human, after all. And yet, the mistake at work was still there, waiting. All I had to do was decide if I was going to use it. I booked a flight back home, keeping it quiet, and arranged to meet Gideon at a quiet cafe he liked, a neutral place, calm and controlled. I didn't plan to reveal everything I'd done, just enough to make him see the truth without letting him trace it all back to me. When I arrived, Gideon was already there, sipping coffee, looking as polished and confident as ever. But the second our eyes met, I saw a flicker of something different: unease, maybe, or the faint shadow of guilt. I took a deep breath and sat down. "I need to say something," I began, keeping my voice steady. "All these years, you've taken the spotlight, claimed credit for my work, manipulated Mom and Dad, and hurt people I cared about. You've made it clear I don't matter to you. That ends today." Gideon's expression shifted, disbelief first. "Evan, you're overreacting. You've always been sensitive. You're twisting things." I shook my head. "No. I'm not twisting anything. I'm just saying it out loud now. You've treated me like I'm invisible, and I won't stand for it anymore." For a moment, he laughed, but it was hollow, defensive. Then his jaw tightened, eyes flashing with rage. "You think you can make me feel small? You've always been pathetic." I interrupted gently but firmly, "I'm not trying to make you feel small. I'm trying to make you see what your arrogance has done. You've built this perfect life, but it's fragile. And maybe now, finally, you can understand what it feels like to be overlooked, to be underestimated." His face went pale, and the anger drained slowly, replaced with shock. Something in him shifted. He realized, maybe for the first time, that I had thought carefully, strategically, and that I wasn't the naive brother he assumed I was. We sat there in silence, the cafe noises around us fading. Could we repair what had been broken for so long? Or was this confrontation the point of no return? I didn't know yet, and neither did he. I flew back to Hawaii, the same waves and trade winds greeting me like an old friend. The island felt different now, calmer, but sharper, like it reflected everything I'd been through. I spent hours walking along the shore, thinking about Gideon, the party, and everything that had happened. Back home, I had heard through scattered calls and texts from family that cracks were appearing. People who had once laughed at his jokes now hesitated before speaking. Aunts and cousins looked at him differently, subtle glances exchanged when he wasn't watching. Even Marissa, his fiancée, had started questioning things, quietly, almost imperceptibly, but enough that he noticed. His pride, once untouchable, was wounded in ways he didn't fully understand. Sitting on the balcony of my bungalow, journal in hand, I realized something important. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about me, reclaiming my sense of self-worth that had been buried under years of feeling overshadowed. I didn't need anyone's validation, not even Gideon's. The satisfaction of seeing him humbled was secondary to the clarity I'd gained about my own life. I thought about the years I'd wasted, letting his arrogance define me. That stopped now. I could chart my own path, make decisions, and find people who truly mattered without carrying the weight of his judgment. The waves crashed below me, steady and relentless, and I felt the same strength in myself, quiet but undeniable. Gideon's world had shifted, subtly but undeniably. He wasn't destroyed, and nothing dramatic had happened. Yet the consequences of his arrogance lingered, quiet reminders of the lessons he hadn't learned before. And for the first time in years, I felt free, truly free, to rebuild my life on my own terms. The sun was dipping low over the horizon as I walked along the Hawaiian beach, sand cool under my feet and waves lapping gently at the shore. My phone buzzed constantly, messages lighting up the screen of friends, family, even a few distant relatives reaching out to praise me, to tell me they admired the way I handled everything with calm and courage. I smiled faintly, letting it wash over me, but it didn't feel like victory over Gideon. It felt like relief. For the first time in years, I realized I didn't need anyone's approval to feel whole. The years of carrying expectations, of trying to prove my worth to a brother who never saw it, could finally be set down. I let go of the anger that had driven me, the silent tally of slights and betrayals. I didn't need revenge to define me, I just needed freedom from the weight of it. I paused, watching the waves stretch out into the endless horizon, and thought about Gideon. He had learned his lessons quietly, subtly, and I didn't need to witness the fallout to know it had worked. My focus wasn't on him anymore, it was on me. Every step I took along that beach felt lighter, deliberate, like reclaiming space I'd never owned before. Bittersweet closure settled in. The past would always be a part of me, and the tension between us would likely linger, but that didn't matter. I didn't need validation from Gideon, from anyone. I only needed it from myself. And as the sun finally sank behind the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: quiet, unwavering strength. I had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and pride and come out whole. For the first time, I was free to be fully, unapologetically me.